I was in church 50 Sundays a year. That's not hyperbole. That's not wild exaggeration. Because we remember hyperbole is wild exaggeration, right? 50 Sundays a year, my mom had my butt in church. The Sunday after Christmas was the Christmas carol, Christmas hymn sing. So we'd read part of the story, sing a song, read part of the story, sing a song. And that was the hour. And my mom said, that's not even church. We're not going. Cool. And once a year in the summer, through some miracle, my mom took us on the most epic road trip to see some part of the United States. We put the tent in the car. We packed up some food. She took us on an epic road trip. So those were the 2 Sundays that my butt wasn't in church. I grew up ELCA Lutheran. And I memorized the pastor's parts. I memorized the congregants' parts. I started reading when I was 8. I started ushering around then too. I went through confirmation and took that deep dive into my Christian faith and said, yes, this is for me at the end of 8th grade. My confirmation class met on Saturday mornings at the local Lutheran camp, Fortune Lake Lutheran Camp. And so Sundays after church, my mom would go to women's Bible study. My sister would go to Sunday school. There was nothing for a 7th grader, 8th grader confirmand to do. So I taught the pre-K class. And I would start to see the pre-K kids in church, and they would giggle at me, and I would smile, and I would sing the songs to them. And that's where I realized that it was easier for me to work with kids than it is to work with adults. I still get real shy in person around a group of adults, even my best friends. But around kids, it's easy to be natural. And in front of this camera, this is fine too. But I became a teacher. I've been teaching for almost 20 years, and that all started in the church when I was a church school teacher, and when I discovered that kids younger than me were drawn to my energy, and I could share with them. In college, my dad was killed by a drunk driver, and so I went home and I saw my pastor, and Kim Beckman was going through studies, and Fred Kinsey was there with her. And she would bring Jesus into the current era. So we saw Jesus at Friday Night Lights. We saw Jesus in the grocery store, and Pastor Beckman would ask, what would Jesus think in the grocery store or at Friday Night Lights? Where would he see injustice? Where would he dine with the sinner? Where would he invite the forgotten? Where would he let the children come to me, do not send them away? Because Jesus said that. And so it was very reflective, and I saw a lot of good in Jesus Christ. I saw a lot of good in my Christian faith. And the Bible said it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And if you want to follow me, take what you have and give it to the poor. I will teach you to be fishers of men. And he who has 2 tunics and sees his neighbor without one is to give him one, and with food likewise. All of this. And at the time, I was living with a single mother, and we lived well below the poverty line. And it wasn't for anything that she had done. She wasn't a sinner. She hadn't been through jail. She wasn't an outcast or immoral. She had 3 jobs. She had a day job, a night job, and a weekend job. And still dragged me to church every Sunday morning. So I saw that. And when the political class and the pundits started saying, well, people are poor because they're lazy, I knew from the very beginning, no, they aren't. My mom works really hard, and we just don't have money. We had bad luck, and that's all there was to it. And then the older I got, the more I learned the system is rigged against us. There's been a $50 trillion transfer of wealth from the working class to the elites. That's the opposite of the church that I went to. My oh my, 20 years in, master's degree, teaching. I'm not getting ahead. I'm barely surviving. 2 maxed out credit cards from groceries and gasoline, and I read the headlines and that's happening everywhere. It's not us, it's the system, it's broken. And it breaks my heart that the Christians seem to be on the wrong side of the issue in so many ways. Jesus said, take what you have and give it. How can you hoard more money than you'll ever spend in 1,000,000 lifetimes? How can you buy a yacht big enough to park your smaller yacht inside of it when people are starving, when children are starving? I don't understand it. When I got older, I got back into the church and I lived in a new town, and my pastor made me go through Luther's small catechism with him. Even though I had been a Lutheran for life, I reviewed Luther's small catechism as an adult, so I got a double dose of Lutheran. And then when I transferred back home, I didn't have to go through it again, but I know my stuff, I guess is all I'm saying. And so my Christian faith plays a huge part in my politics. Of course it does. I don't need my faith. There is a golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. Do you want to watch people starving from your Lamborghini? Do you want to drive past homeless people in your Maserati? Isn't that a sin-sick soul? I love that part. To heal the sin-sick soul. If you hoard more cash than you can ever spend in 1,000,000 lifetimes, you have a sin-sick soul. And if Christ isn't compelling you to share with USAID, with Lutheran Social Services. Do you know they shut that down? I've contributed to Lutheran Social Services. At least I think so. We do a little coffee hour after church, and it's a free will offering. There's a basket you throw cash in, and every Sunday they say, well, this week it's going to. I gotta think some of it went to Lutheran Social Services. It would be fine if it went to USAID. Did you hear the Trump administration just burned, 500 tons of food for starving children that was grown, produced, packaged in the United States? Spent $130,000 burning expired food for starving kids in Pakistan. I don't see Christ in that decision, and I rarely see Christ in the Trump administration, and I rarely see Christ in the Republican Party. My Christ says, invite the forgotten. It was on a banner in the front of the church, and there was a girl. Looked like she was in an alley. There was a brick wall behind her and pavement below her, and she was cuddling her knees, and it said, invite the forgotten. That's the church I grew up in. That's the ELCA that I support. And I still attend from time to time. My grandpa was nearing the end of his life, and he said, Connie, will you please take my spot on the church council so that I can just be done with it? And I said, yeah, Grandpa, I'll do that. And so I was installed in January of 2020, and he died in March of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And it was such a strange time. But I was on the church council, and I was on the call committee. We were without a pastor. And this pastor came in. We thought, oh man, we would love. There's a young guy, and his wife works in town, and if we could just get him into our church. He's got 4 kids. He's got energy. He loves running and biking and skiing. He looks like Howie Mandel. Same little, right there. Same eyes, same bald head. Big old tattoo on his shoulder. He coaches cross country. He's cool. He's not above talking trash about some people. He's not above a stogie. He's restoring a classic car. It's a good guy. He's easy to be around. And I know when I was in college at Grand Valley, the conservative Christian movement was so overwhelming there. And I rattled a lot of feathers by writing what I saw in Christ, because the conservatives in Western Michigan didn't see that part of Christ. And so I fought. I fought for gay rights. People said, gay rights will destroy the traditional marriage. Gay marriage didn't ruin my first marriage. It had nothing to do with it. My second marriage is far more of a biblical abomination than any gay marriage. If a man divorces his wife and another man takes her as his wife, he commits adultery. That's what it says in the Bible. Do you want to take literally every single part of the Bible? No, you don't. Women can't cut their hair. You can't eat shrimp. Follow the Bible's rules about paying for slaves. There's one Republicans are probably good with, actually, and that's embarrassing. I know my Bible, but I also know it's a book written by men, inspired by God, translated by King James. I can take the parts that I love, that I need, that I cherish, and I can say, oh, my buddies down the street want to get me. I don't care. Go for it. Doesn't matter to me. I'm more interested in that two tunics thing, because my neighbors are in even more dire financial straits than I am. My friends, my family members, we're all poor here in the Northwoods. And it's not right. And this nation has a sin-sick soul. If we compare it to other nations, if we want to make America great again, how do you measure that? Because I would choose happy and healthy. We're not the happiest country and we're not the healthiest country. How can we be happier? How can we be healthier? For where your treasures lie, that is where your heart lies also. What are we investing in? ICE, unidentified masked police agents to kidnap brown people and throw them in concentration camps? 32 men to a cage? No criminal charges. Kidnapped and thrown in a cage in America. And the Christians take pictures, and the Christians buy merch for this concentration camp. And it breaks my heart, and it angers my God. And I'd love to change the narrative, because I remember when George Bush was in office and there was a war on Christmas. We can't say happy holidays. This is a Christian country. A, no it isn't. B, then start acting like it. Reflect Christ in your work, in your words, in your actions. Because my God, my Christ, is not okay with this injustice in America. He's not smiling on this favored nation if we're going to be racist, bigoted, prejudiced, misogynist. It's not right. And so, in my time in the church council, we got that awesome pastor with the tattoo and the kids and and he came in and he said, your Constitution is broken and I will be violating it at my soonest opportunity, at my earliest opportunity. Pardon me. Your Constitution says this church will not, this pastor will not approve same-sex marriages. This congregation will not call a pastor in a same-sex relationship. Well, he didn't have to worry about that. He's got a beautiful wife and 4 kids. But that whole not performing, get real. He said, I'm going to break your Constitution. Would you like to change your Constitution before I can break it? And we said, yes, please. And I joined the Constitution Committee. And I learned so much about what a Constitution is. Like, holy crap. This document, either we are writing laws down and following them, or we're not. One or the other. That's it. I did a story called Paper. Either we are honoring our papers or we are not. And so we went through the Constitution, and it had been many, many years. So one of the cool little old ladies in church went through line by line and changed numbers and changed punctuation and changed congregation to church or church to congregation or whatever, made it align. And then we went through and we said, okay, here's the part we're deleting. My pleasure, sir. I'd love to. I have gay friends. I've had gay friends since 6th grade. So what? And so we fixed the Constitution, and then we had to bring it in front of the congregation because that's how you do things. And we said, hey, just so you know, Pastor wanted this part changed from 10, 15 years ago. And we prayed. We said, Lord, please open the hearts. And so we had a meeting. There were 2 people that objected. There were 2 people who said, but what about what the Bible says? Everybody else. And I'm like the 2nd youngest person in the church who attends. I'm the 2nd youngest council member. No, 3rd youngest council member. There was one. All these little old ladies, little old men are like, whatever. We got a niece, we got a nephew, we got a grandson, don't care. And that little old lady who went through line by line said, the church owes the boomers an apology. And I thought that was absolutely fair. Completely fair. And ironically enough, on the day of the congregation vote, our prayers included prayers for the gay and lesbian community, those who face discrimination, those who are outcast. May they be protected and safe and taken care of by Christians. And so my point to the 2 who were not comfortable was, we don't write the bulletin insert. That comes from, where does it come from? Great Lakes? Or the ELCA as a whole? Well, we have our printing company, right? What am I thinking of? Nerds. There's a great big movement, and the tide is turning, and it's stressful for some old people. Old Christians who are used to things being the way they were. White, straight Christians at the top of the social pyramid, and everyone else can be marginalized underneath. And we'll take care of some of those marginalized if they're appropriately respectful, if they humble themselves and come ask for a little protection from Christians. We'll do that. Not acceptable. So there's this freak out. What if we allow gay people to be just as equal? What if we allow black people to be just as equal? What will happen to our... It reminds me of when our tiny little school basketball team and the tiny school basketball team down the road came together. Parents said, well, what about my kid's playing time? And the coaches said, well, if your kid is the best player, your kid's playing time won't be affected. Well, what if he's not? Then he's going to sit the bench. Yes, or we'll have a losing team. Do you want a losing team with your kid playing, or do you want the best team you can have? Some people are voting for their kid to play and our team to suffer and lose. We got all this white, me first. No room for diversity, equity, or inclusion because things were great when white people were at the top of the social order. No. We want the smartest, the brightest, the best God has to offer. God has blessed some of us with talents. We shouldn't be settling for idiots and buffoons. We shouldn't be settling for hate and anger and me first. My favorite thing that my pastor says is that selfishness is the root of all greed. And I completely agree. I see it in my own life. I see it everywhere. When I go into myself and I only think of myself, that's when I hurt others. That's when I disrespect my wife, my son, my mom, my brother, my sisters. When I'm selfish. When I'm not selfish, when I look out for the good of my community, that's when I best reflect Christ. And that's what Bird Dog Politics is about, bringing that element of my Christian faith back in. Because I look around, I have a baby due next week, one way or another. It's been a rough pregnancy. But this world, this country that we're in right now is going through something. That $50 trillion transfer of wealth. I teach transfer of energy in my science class, I'm sorry. That $50 trillion transfer of wealth from the working class to the elites started with Reagan, with the top tax rate being cut and with stock buybacks being made legal. That's when this transfer of wealth started. And people are angry and people see that this is wrong. There's injustice. So who do we blame? The hotel cleaning ladies? When I go into the city and I see cleaning ladies at a hotel, you want me to believe they have all my money? The immigrants up on the roof of the construction site, you want me to believe they have I think the rich have all my money, and I think the rich have forgotten Christ, and I think the rich are not living as Christians. And so they should either give it as Christ implores them, as Christ implores them. Or we should tax them and get things back to normal. This is not the way that Grandpa lived. This is not the way Grandma lived. A man could go to work and come home and have money to put in the collection plate. And so here we are, 2025. I don't go to church as often as I used to. And it's selfishness, and it's pride, and it's ego. But in the first Trump term, things had finally gone my way. I was giving $35 a week to the church, and I knew the church needed it, and I know the church still does. My pastor's talking about getting a side hustle because being a pastor doesn't pay the bills in America. You know how much I don't want my pastor to DoorDash me a pizza? I want that with every bit of my being. It's wonderful that he coaches the kids. He's a track coach, cross-country coach. He's always in the school. That's enough. I don't want to see him bartending. I don't want to see him as a waiter. I don't want to see him checking out my groceries at the grocery store. One job is enough. And America needs to get back to that. And if you're interested in any of that and how my Christian faith leads me here and gives me the strength to start this YouTube channel, please stick around and prayerfully consider some of my other thoughts and episodes. I worry that the authoritarianism, the fascism is going to overtake us if we don't bring Christ back and take up the right side of this argument. I'd like to build a coalition with Christians, with teachers, with football fans and music fans, and guys like me who just can't get ahead anymore. Guys like my pastor. We love this country. We want to see it succeed. And we see extreme warning lights going off with censorship of the press and with concentration camps being built in 8 days, and with ICE having a bigger budget than the Marines now. Why does it feel like the secret police could overtake the Marines? Thank God for Marine training. But these are dangerous times, and I am compelled to speak up. I cannot sit idly by. So thank you for your time. I pray you consider some of my other work, like, subscribe, share this. Please share this. Our country needs more of Jesus. More of the Jesus I'm familiar with. Because that one we went through during the war on Christmas was not where it's at. God bless.